How's it going, guys? Hope you're doing well. My name is Max Crone, and this is Estate Mate. You are in for a treat today because today we have an inside look into Estates, a company designed to revolutionize commercial real estate investing. And we get that with an inside look from Matt Schneider, the co-founder and CEO of Estates. So, Matt, I'm extremely glad that we could make this happen.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Of course. So first of all, I kind of just wanted to ask you, where did you get this idea, and who initially brought this idea to the table?
Well, quite literally, it was brought to a table, and that was my co-founder. One evening, we were in Milwaukee, and we were out for drinks, and he was talking about fractional commercial real estate. And he didn't really have the term fractional at the time, but he said he wanted to break down investments so that his friends could get involved in the commercial real estate deals that he was participating in. And when I say break down, that's because usually you have to write a check of $50,000, $75,000. So his plan initially was he was going to own some real estate. He was going to bring down that entry barrier. And then he wanted me to manage the properties. And I didn't really like the idea of becoming a property manager. I didn't see it as scalable or a long-term career for myself. So I said, okay, very interesting idea that you have. I'll think on it. And so I went home and I thought on it. And the next day I brought him a business plan to actually turn this into like a monetizable marketplace where we take commercial real estate assets, we fractionalize them, we don't have to own them, and I wasn't a property manager. And he really liked the idea for that. And thus Estates, as an idea was born.
Okay, so it was out of kind of an alternative for a different, I guess, idea that your was it the co-founder, your co-founder wanted to pursue?
Yeah, I should name drop him here. So Sean Schneider, actually my cousin as well, but also my co-founder in the venture. Yeah, it was really fundamentally, I owe the idea to him. But at the same time, it was, that joint effort that brought this into fruition. And it still remains that way, where we sort of have this yin and yang dichotomy where we have our separate roles and we don't really interfere with each other's territory too much. But it was, in a sense, an integration or an innovation of his idea that transmuted into Estates.
Okay. And when it comes to the actual like deliverable or whatever you want to say there, the idea is that people can get started commercially, like investing in commercial properties with as low as like how much money we're talking?
$500.
$500. Okay. And is that through I saw on your website there's something that said something along the lines of powered by Polygon. So
That's a
is
portion of it.
that
Yeah.
like okay? So when you actually go and or let's go with this. So could you take me through kind of the buying process from not having heard of Estates to actually having a piece of a commercial property?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unravel here from, the deliverable of Estates to, the investor's journey. So to
Mhm.
answer the last question, what does it look like to go from not knowing about commercial real estate to suddenly becoming a fractional shareholder in this asset class? We've decided to model it so that it is as similar to something like Robinhood or Coinbase as possible, because we know that's what people are familiar with. And they're most familiar with that because until recently, commercial real estate wasn't even an investment option. You think about the stock market and crypto or bonds, but commercial real estate, that's sort of newfound. And so if we want people to get into this asset class, but not have to relearn everything. We need to base it off of existing models. So if you are an investor, you would head to our marketplace. You would find a property that you would like. And this pretty much resembles browsing, the stock market and finding something that has great performance, looks attractive, maybe aligns with your beliefs, is in your general location. Performing due diligence, performing your due diligence, and then clicking the buy button. We've really tried to streamline it as much as possible because historically, commercial real estate is not a streamlined industry. It's very antiquated. There's a lot of legality that goes into it. There's a lot of waiting. It's more complex than it needs to be. I would even say artificially complex. And so the more we can simplify it and gamify it, the more people are going to be willing and ready to adopt it.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there too. That's for sure. So do you guys have an app currently, or is that in development? Is it going to be ready for people's phones in, a year, or what's the kind of the vision there?
We have a web platform that's in sort of like not necessarily an alpha, sort of an open beta, but it will be enterprise grade in about 3 to 4 weeks, because we've recently started a massive phase of redevelopment for the front end, for the user dashboards, the back end stuff, so that it's ready to grow and scale. We're also going to roll out a mobile app eventually, but that's a little bit costly. So working with what we have, it's going to be on a web app. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't access it from your phone, and that goes for property owners and investors alike. But right now, you would head to estates.com, and that would allow you to create an account, whether you're a real estate developer, property owner, or an investor, and then find the tools that you need to get started.
Okay. And with regards to being a sponsor, what kind of requirements are there? Does it just need to be, or do you just need to have a property that is technically commercial, that you essentially kind of not give up, but offer to estates? And then how does that work?
Yeah, so the first, I would say, misconception that we have to rectify is that you aren't getting rid of your property. You're not selling it to estates, and you don't lose ownership. If you are a property owner or a real estate developer, you are just selling a portion of your equity to the investors through our marketplace. Fundamentally, you are therefore raising capital by selling, fractional ownership of your property. If you are a sponsor, as we call them, you would need to have a commercial asset that you are the managing partner or the general partner of. And this means that you are in control. The entity that you own, the business, let's say, has the deed to the property, to the land, and you manage its operations.
Okay. Interesting. Kind of a complete pivot from like the logistics of your deliverable, your marketing as a whole, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, even your YouTube and your website, like everything looks really good. Do you have a marketing, like a chief marketing officer, like someone, like a marketing specialist? I know you guys have a pretty tight team, it seems like.
Well, up until recently, everything in regards to messaging, branding, content creation has been my responsibility, and I still lead the way in that area, although we do have some marketing partners now. So the banners that you see, the social media posts, the wording of paragraphs and headings, the stuff that I put on LinkedIn, whether it's my personal page, whatever, sort of beating a dead horse, it is done through me. I do have a little bit of fun with that creative components, where not only am I handling the educational and the sophistication of the writing to make sure that it's professional and appropriate for, a commercial real estate audience, which tend to be a little bit older, a little bit more, I would say, accredited or knowledgeable about the industry, while still giving it that modern, youthful, and innovative touch. It's quite a balance to try to combine both, where I'm simplifying things so that new people can get into the industry while also catering to the expectations and the insights that are, I would say, interesting to professionals in the industry.
Okay, like the current demographic that is interested or would be interested. Do you see that kind of shifting, like more young people being interested in like mainly real estate, but also just like personal development and personal finance? Do you see that shift having any impact on your business?
Definitely. And I say that because we're also trying to tailor this towards Gen Z, who might not have a track record of building, personal wealth. Now we're trying to make this investment strategy available to them. And so we do have to teach them, how to build wealth utilizing commercial real estate, passive income appreciation, while not trying to simplify it too much that it pushes, say, older investors or more experienced investors out of the picture, where they feel like, they're not going to get the same level of professionalism or returns because this is catered towards younger people. We want to demonstrate that no matter where you are in the spectrum of, investor experience, we have a solution that meets your needs.
Okay. What do you think your biggest challenge has been with estates? Like biggest challenge overall, is it development? Is it outreach? Is it, getting the word out there? What do you think biggest problem is?
Well, the biggest problem is that there are so many endless problems. I I honestly couldn't like pinpoint a single major problem that I'd say, oh, this is the biggest thing. I always dread this. I wake up and dread it. No, it's really a combination of, I know that I am going to have an endless onslaught of things to worry about. And it's been that way since the beginning of the company. I mean, whether you're dealing with regulation, trying to raise capital, running out of capital, trying to find people, losing people, building the platform and tailoring the product to your markets, people not understanding your messaging properly and then having to tweak that, or having to modify your product into something that meets the customer's expectations, but sort of detaches from your initial vision. The extraordinary amount of patience that it takes to actually take a project this large off the ground. The doubt that people have, whether it's peers, investors, clients, when you're, especially for someone who is Gen Z, when you are starting out and you have nothing to build off of, you are literally manifesting everything into existence. It does not exist. What we built was already relatively revolutionary. It was new. There wasn't a lot of information on it. But then to have someone who isn't backed by millions of dollars of capital, a massive network of advisors and mentors who can assist. I didn't have attorneys who could write everything for me, and I didn't have software developers. To create something from nothing, it's extraordinary, and it will absolutely demand the most from you. Continuously. It'll demand the most from you continuously, like week after week, day after day, every single hour. You may end up dreading having to work on this because it seems like it's going nowhere. But what I can say, because that sounded very pessimistic, is that eventually there's sort of like a threshold, and I think it's Atomic Habits. I was listening to this audiobook where if you are trying to melt ice, for example, degrees 0 through 31, there's going to be nothing. You hit 32, ice starts to melt. So it's like, does that mean that warming up from 0 to 31 was useless? No, it was absolutely necessary so that you could get to 32, which happened to be your success threshold. And I think about that a lot now, because the last not only 52 weeks since we really got serious about this, but 104 weeks since the company was actually, like, the idea was started, it felt like we weren't going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, the most traction that we've had is in the past month. And it's all happened in the past month because of things that I was doing in the previous 23 months. So it's just, you have to be able to stick with it and allow the pieces to come together. And that, like, it's easier said than done. It's so easy for me to look back now and say, oh yeah, I realize now that sticking with it and working really hard brought the whole project together. I did not know that until now. Like, I had doubts. I had my own doubts every single step of the way. It seriously has led me, through a roller coaster of emotions where it's like, oh, this is really exciting. I hate everything that's going on. Now I'm angry. Now I'm upset. Now, all these different things. But you got to pay off that time debt, which is an Alex Hormozy term, where it's like
Hormozy, yep.
Yeah. I'm a big fan. I've been listening to him more and more. Personally, I think he looks like my brother, Luke Schneider. So
that's funny.
Shout out to you, Luke. You might be doing the right thing, but you just have to, like, I don't really know how to explain his definition of time debt, but you might be doing the right thing at the wrong time. And so if you just keep at it, eventually it'll click. And that's sort of the Atomic Habits idea again. But, from a self-development standpoint, you are going to develop like crazy, because if you were where you needed to be right now, you would be successful. Your company would be off the ground. But until you are ready, you're going to have to work on yourself. You'll hit that point, and then everything will come together. I can almost guarantee that whoever you are now is not eminently qualified to build a big business. And I certainly wasn't. I'm sort of glad that it took forever for the business, for eStates, to get off the ground, because I cannot imagine myself having the education, the knowledge, or the wisdom to actually operate the company with the demands that it has now, which is still just launching.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. There's yeah. So essentially, stick with it, be consistent, and you know that you're not going to see returns for a while. It's just a matter of, not only having the right time, but stacking those skills to have the ability to keep up with it, in good times and bad. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I guess this, you might have answered this question already, but how many times have you wanted to quit?
I've written about this, and I have sort of mixed feelings when it comes to this answer. Because if I had really wanted to quit, I would have. I'm the person that when I want something, I get it. So if I had wanted to quit, I would have. What I will say is that frequently I wouldn't really say I am anymore. I'm sort of past that point of no return. But along the journey, I was tempted to quit. And that's because I view things as like, okay, what are the pros? What are the cons? If I quit now, I think I would be better off than if I were to continue with this, damned, doomed project. And I would say that my co-founder has felt the same way at certain points, where it's like, all right, we put a bunch of money into this. We might have to keep dumping money into it. Are we just going to be burning our cash? How do we know that this is going to work out? So logically, it did make sense at a couple points to quit, but I absolutely did not allow it. And I stuck with it. And here, I mean, it worked out. We really would have sabotaged ourselves and everything, all the potential. Just because we couldn't see the potential doesn't mean that it wasn't there. We would have thrown that all away. We would have nullified all of our sacrifices if we had quit.
I love that that term, tempted instead of wanted, because you hear like, did you want to quit? Oh, I wanted to quit however many times. It's like, and like you said, if I wanted to quit, I would have, because I'm the type of person that I do what I essentially do what I want. Yeah, that is
Well, to some
well,
degree,
within reason.
there's a lot of self-development components that can be broken down there. So when we first kicked this off, that sentence is a little bit lost, so I'm going to circle back. When I first started the company, it goes back to my point where it's like, I thought I was capable of running a company. I had never started a company. Like, who was I to think that? Versus now, I'm still running the same company, but we've pivoted several times and we've had a lot of time for evolution. And so now I do feel comfortable. A really good example is pitching. Oh, this is where I was going to go with that. It took me forever to learn how to pitch my own company. It's like, okay, this is what I do every single day. I know what we do. Someone asks me what I do, I don't know what I do. So when you were running through the introduction and you were kind of like trying to figure out how to word like, well, what is e-states? I completely understand the struggle, because when I talk to people, not so much anymore, because fortunately I've done it 1,000 times, but it took me 999 times to figure out what our story was, even though I lived it, what our mission was, what our product does. And now I've got it to the point where I really know how to explain it eloquently. But yeah, the third time doing something, you are going to suck at it. And
Yeah, yeah.
that's just the way that it is. And I recognize that when it comes to being a founder as well, a lot of people fail the first time they start a company. Now, I've kind of dabbled with entrepreneurial stuff and e-commerce, and I've had my fair share of failures, but I also recognize that in terms of startups, I'm considered a first-time founder. So for things to be going this well, I cannot ever take that for granted. And I have to understand that it's good luck, it's blessings, it's hard work that made this happen. Because really, for a 21-year-old to not only have a financial technology startup, but to be capitalized as well, the odds of that happening are damn near zero. So I'm very fortunate, but in most instances, you have to fail over and over. And in my own way, I've failed to get here. But just, sort of a variation of that, because at least it's still e-states, because I really love e-states.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of in that situation. Well, not in that situation, but I am kind of in the first year e-states situation, I guess you could say, with it being technically like my business, MK Media, being my first company, but I transitioned it from a different venture. Same, like I registered the LLC under MK Media, but before that, all of like the Instagram, the LinkedIn profile, Facebook, all of that kind of stuff was a different logo, different name, and all of that kind of stuff. But then I changed it to MK Media because it fit what I'm doing a little bit better. And I transformed everything from the deliverable to marketing material. But yeah, I'm in the phase where I don't see anything for really long time. I don't know when that's going to happen. But I saw something by Ed Milet the other day. It was like a quote that his father told him. It was about essentially like people aren't in like the people that are quote unquote broke. I can't really paraphrase this too well, but people that are quote unquote broke. The thing that separates them from the people that quote unquote made it is their mindset. Like you're one phone call, you're one meeting, you're one this or that, you're one book, you're one job away from being there, and you need to have that mindset to kind of ascend to the next level. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I have my mindset in the place of, I just need one more reach out to get my what would be second client. I just need to do one more this or that, and I'll be there. But yeah, I'm in that phase where it seems like nothing's ever going to happen. I have a great product and deliverable, but it just seems like I'm at like, you know, 28 degrees and I can't melt yet. But,
It's going to be true for everything, though.
mhm.
A really good example in the startup world is fundraising. I have reached out to like 500 investors. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but that's what it feels like. And it's probably very close to that number. And I was rejected over and over. And part of it was because I had terrible messaging, or we were too early, or they weren't a good fit. And then all of a sudden, I had one person interested in us. And then everyone else was interested in us just because of that. Like it's
Yeah,
phenomenal. It's
when it
there's
rains it pours, that
yeah, I guess
philosophy.
that's the perfect quote. I saw that quote the other day and I was like, I don't know what that means. Now I know what it means. So I am really glad that you mentioned that,
That's
because
funny.
that's exactly um what happened. A little bit of investor interest, and then I go to the next investor and I say, we have this person who's interested. Here's where we are. Do you want in? They say yes. Now I have more leverage. I have two people who are interested. Do you want in? Now I have three. And it's a snowball effect. But it really took forever to get here, because this is not the first time that we have tried to fundraise. We've been trying to fundraise for the past year, and I was just going about it terribly. And it wasn't until recently that we had all of our ducks in a row so that we could actually pull this off. And now we're pulling it off.
I see. Yeah, that's fascinating. So what type of outreach did you go about messaging these people? Is it connections you already have, or how'd you go about doing that?
Initially or recently?
Initially, and we'll go into recently.
Initially, it was finding a spreadsheet of investors, clicking on their emails and sending them an email, which is a very terrible way to go about things. What's really nice about getting one person to say yes is that it unlocks a network. And this is another thing that took a year to build up. And there's a reason I post on LinkedIn and I'm connecting with people. I'm establishing a network, a presence, and now I'm well known. People have seen my face, several dozen times, so that when I do reach out to them, they're familiar with me. It's no longer cold. Plus, if I get a warm introduction, it's the deal is pretty much sealed, because all right, these people, I'm in their in group. They're enticed to work with me because someone else is suggesting it that they trust, and we have something good to offer. So building up that network, again, as a Gen Z, your network is who you went to high school with. Maybe, some of your college peers, although oftentimes circles tend to consolidate a little bit further, but that doesn't give you leverage in the business world. It's a wild west when it comes to business. Like everyone is working with everyone across the entire world. Just
Hmm.
talking to people who have commonalities like, oh yeah, we're in the chess club, or we went to this party together, no longer works. You have to make your bones again. As an entrepreneur, very difficult. A lot of entrepreneurs don't go to college. And so you're kind of missing out on that. So you're going to miss out on some warm introductions from, professors or people in the industry and whatnot. And so it will take, and this does not happen overnight, it will take probably a year at least to build up a good social media, particularly LinkedIn presence, in order to have the social proof that you need to convince people of your mission, of your story, of your product.
Okay. And what if you, let's just say you go ahead, you message these people and they're not, like, they think that you are maybe a scammer or whatever the case may be. Like they don't think that you're legit, or they're just simply not convinced that this is a good opportunity for them. And then you go ahead and get content out there. Do you think there's ever a reversal of that first, like that bad first impression? Or do you think once you have that, it's pretty difficult to change their mind?
So to answer the first question first, what to do if people are unfamiliar with you. Again, social proof. Do you have a lot of connections? Do you post a lot? Can people find you online? Do you have a website? Do you have some recommendations? It's very important to build up that social proof, because then they won't think that you're a scam. They'll just think you might not have something that I can offer you. Then you have to make sure, A, you're targeting the right person, and B, you have something good to offer. So that sort of resolves that. Now, let's say that someone does decline doing business with you. Can you go back? Absolutely. We rely on this so much. It's FOMO. It's the fear of missing out. By making that first impression on people, whether it's good or bad, if you can at least follow up or keep them informed in some way, maybe it's just connected with you on LinkedIn, they'll probably see a post and then they'll reach out to you later once you've made it, if you will. And they'll want in. Oftentimes, whether it's investors or clients or partners, friends, whatever, people only want to get in if there's demonstration of momentum. It's like, I don't want to be the first one at the party, but if this is already a bustling party, I want in. And it's the same thing. So you don't really have to worry about having ruined a first impression. You'll have more chances. Now, if you did something absolutely terrible and told this person to screw off when they said, I don't want to do business with you, it's over. But if it was, yeah, I don't think we're a good fit right now, and you say, okay, thanks for letting me know, wishing you the best. All right, cool. Now at least we have a second chance down the road if something changes. And this is why consistency and building in public, I think, is important as well, because as you grow, as you reestablish yourself, you might perk some ears, and then those people will want to come back and get involved. And then that momentum just builds because more people involved, more demonstration of traction, bigger community, bigger network, your name becomes more well-known. And then eventually you get to the point where people aren't declining you just because you're a stranger or they don't trust you. They want to work with you because they think that they'll miss out if they don't.
Okay. So would you say kind of it goes from being declined to I guess I'm gonna change that question. What is the best way that you've seen to get people to hear you out? Because there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of outreach methods, but in my case, selfishly, whenever I'm messaging someone, they're like, I get these messages all the time, I don't need to hear it, like I don't, how do you stand out?
Well, the low-hanging fruit for this question is getting a warm introduction, having a referral or word of mouth. That certainly can't be underestimated. It doesn't necessarily scale easily because it's one person talking to another, but It is a foolproof method of getting someone else's business. Next, making sure that you are targeting the right person is super important. I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn from people who think I'm in a different industry. They have no clue what I'm doing. They say, would you like this service that doesn't pertain to me? It's like, no, I don't want anything to do with you now. Because it's not only are you trying to sell to me, which, usually comes off a little bit harsh, but you're selling the wrong thing to me. You did no due diligence. You don't care about me at all. You didn't look into me. You ran a bot, some sort of automation. You got my name. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get this guy's money. You should screw off. You're not going to have a second chance with me because we're not aligned at all. There is no maybe I'm on the fence. It's pretty bad. So making sure that you don't do that. Looking for some sort of overlap or synergy, commonalities, whatever. Then, of course, catering your message to their needs. A lot of people say, and I've worked with a good friend of mine. His name is Nolan. He runs a media firm. He does videography. And so he goes out, films video for local restaurants, sometimes products and influencers, and he's really been growing that. In the beginning, he would reach out to people, and Nolan, I'm sorry if you don't want me to tell this story, but I think he's grown. He's doing really well now. So as a shared learning experience, I'm going to use his tale. He'd reach out to people and he'd say, hey, I film video. Do you, and this is paraphrased, it wasn't this terrible. I film video. Do you want me to film video for you? You're like, what the hell? No. What does that even mean? Like, that's funny. Then he began tweaking it. It's like, hey, I film video for small businesses. Would you like that? It's like, okay, that's a step closer. Then it was, I create content to boost your sales through your website, to help you get established on DoorDash. I can help you renovate your social media presence so that you have more brand awareness, XYZ. He began tailoring his messaging to what they benefit, what they stand to benefit, and really focusing on the why, not so much the what or the how. So he wasn't talking about, hey, I'll take a video for you and give you some pictures. It was, I really want to help your business grow and grow your brand, grow your awareness, and do that through XYZ. So why, how, what, kind of working on that backwards. Because when you do sell the why, everyone can get behind a why. It pulls on the heartstrings. It's the messaging. When I reach out to people and I say, hey, we're trying to transform an industry so that we can get more people involved in this great investment strategy, that's way better than, and I'll admit, the website's just about to be updated. So if you were to click right now, you'd be like, oh, marketplace, crowdfunding marketplace. It's like, yeah, we're going to update that. Now it's about, we want people to get behind a vision, a mission. They want to partake in something big, something with an ethical attachment. So focusing, on that emotional side of things, which comes with the why, like, why should I do this? Well, because it's beneficial. It'll improve you. That's not necessarily the end all be all when it comes to minimizing your rejection, but it certainly sets you on the right path, because it's very easy for people to say, no, I don't want that product, but it's much harder to say, no, I don't want to be improved. No, I don't want things to get better. No, I don't want to boost my sales. So focusing on that why makes it a lot harder to decline, and then really gets them in the door, and you can start to negotiate. All right, what services do you really need? What would you pay for that? And figure out the details later. But at least now you're starting on the same page. I think it was Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. You always start a conversation with another person with them saying yes. Yes, yes, yes. Get them to agree with you as much as possible. Now you're aligned in more ways than you're not, so that it's not, 4 no's and then trying to get to a yes. It might be 4 yeses, potentially a no, but more than likely a yes, because that's the resounding answer.
And what keeps conversations kind of flowing Um, so is it so more of a solution based kind of cold message as opposed to I can do this for you. So instead of yeah, this I can do this for you, um, you say, do you want this? Like you have this pain, I can solve it. Like kind of more on that scope instead of and making it kind of easy for them to say yes to.
I really like that you want to focus more on that person's pain point because one, that makes it more personable to them, but it's much easier to address what solutions they actually need because now you know what the problem is. This goes to Jordan Belfort's selling me this pen. If I walk up to someone and I'm like, hey, look at this pen, it's got all these features and functions, but they don't have the problem of needing to write or not having a pen, then your selling is worthless. So recognizing like, oh yeah, I really need to write something down. I've been struggling to take notes recently. Do you have a pen? No. Now you're in. Now you're in. So reaching out to people and whatever industry that they're in, of course, you're not going in blind. You kind of know what you're leading towards. Like, I'm going to try to get to this person to say that they have this problem so that I can offer this solution. But at least recognizing that the problem exists and just asking questions, find out as much as you can. Because if they say, I wish that I could write things down, but I've never had the money to afford a pen. Now you know that the problem is not whether or not they need or want the pen, it's that they can't afford it. And so you can play with pricing. And if you can get the pricing down, now you have a new customer. So asking more questions to figure out what's stopping them from saying yes, not trying to get them to say yes, but like kind of using that reverse psychology of like what's stopping them from saying yes and then navigating it that way.
Okay. Have you read or listened to $100 million offers?
I was just looking at it on Amazon.
Okay.
I'm only familiar with it to the extent that Alex talks about it.
Okay. So there's I don't want to spoil this, but he has mentioned this in his shorter form content. So he yeah, I don't know if I want to spoil it, but because I don't know if he's I know he said it in some of his like webinars and like when he's on stage he'll or not webinars, but when he's on stage he'll allude to this, but it was something along the lines of if you have a hot dog stand, it doesn't really matter that you have a hot dog stand. It only matters if you have a starving crowd. And it's like and he asks he kind of like asks the audience or whatever like what's the best thing that a hot dog stand could have going for them, and people were saying location, which is kind of true, and some people were saying the best hot dogs in town, and then like this and this, and he was like a starving crowd. So it's kind of along those same lines of having a demographic that needs what you have and or needs your solution that you can provide to them. But yeah, I don't know.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, this is
No.
really what's product market fit. So how do you know that there's a real demand for what you are offering in the market? And we had to go through a lot of experimentation in order to arrive here. When we first came up with fractional real estate, and not that we came up with it, but wanted to go down the route of fractional real estate, we said, okay, tokenized real estate, we're going to use all this cool technology. People are going to buy tokens that represents real estate. We brought that idea to people. They said, that's very cool, but it's so confusing. I don't understand it. I probably wouldn't use it on my properties, or on the flip side, I wouldn't use it to invest. I was like, okay, so we figured out 20% of the equation now. What's the other 80%? How do we actually fit this product into the market? And that's where eStates has evolved so much, where the marketplace is only a small component at this point. We realize that we need the whole suite of solutions. I liken this to tokenization, blockchain, that cool stuff. That's the engine. And it's the engine of a car. In order to drive that car, I need to give people the steering wheel. I need to give them the seat, everything else, all the components of this vehicle. And then that is what actually gives them the tools. Now, when I bring a new solution to property owners and investors, and I say, here's how we can help you onboard. Here's the benefits, not just to you, but to your investors. Here's how we make it super simple. And here's all of the accommodations that you unlock when you digitize your property with us. Then they say, oh, that's great. Now we're not just a dot. We're not just dots. We've connected the dots. That's the solution that people are looking for the whole time. Not just a dot alone on a piece of paper. People want to be able to navigate. So yeah, I mean, you really have to understand the problems of your customers, or else you don't exist. Because exactly, you could have a hot dog stand, but if no one is hungry, you won't have any sales. You could have the best damn hot dogs in the city, but if no one is hungry, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I like that. So with estates and finding product market fit, was it a matter of surveys? Was it a matter of objections? How do you get, the most valuable feedback to maybe tweak your deliverable or to tweak your message?
Yeah, well, that's a good point, because it was a combination of the product and then also the messaging. And that's why I'm really excited to roll out this new phase of, our website, our landing page, all that type of stuff, where we've really overhauled how people are going to perceive estates. And it's reflected more on our social medias currently. But yeah, so how do we get to the point where I had to make the decision that something needs to change? Objection was the primary driving factor. It's like, okay, I present this to people, whether it's a customer or an investor, and they don't like it. Maybe it's just a bad investor. Bring it to another person. No. How many times do you have to be rejected until you realize the problem is not them, it's you? So I decided, okay, something has to change. Let me dive deeper into these rejections. What don't people like? Well, that technology seems like a real hassle. I just don't think that it's really solving the problem. Okay, let me modify it. That's what I did. Bring it back to people. Oh, that's really cool. It's a step in the right direction. Start to bring it to customers. Say, would you pay for this? Would you be interested in raising money with us? And then accessing liquidity and providing a really good experience for your investors, automating a bunch of stuff. Would you like to save time and money using our automation tools? Yes, I would. Now, we weren't offering that before. It was just like, hey, do you want to tokenize your assets? It's like there's no selling power in that. Most people don't even know what that means. But we thought like, oh yeah, tokenization is the future. Everyone's going to want to tokenize their assets. It didn't go anywhere. So to update our messaging, and this is our hard truth to swallow, because it means you are going to have to fail first, fail several times before you even have the opportunity to grow and then to succeed. So, and you kind of have to look like a fool. And I realized that looking back, like, yeah, I looked kind of stupid bringing what I had to people, and they treated me like I was kind of stupid. But it laid the groundwork for the growth to occur. And then I was able to make the adaptations necessary to make something not stupid, but actually rather genius. And bam, now people get behind it.
So you think it's necessary to sometimes look stupid?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And look, what's really nice is that aside from celebrities, okay, if you think about your friends and family, or people you've done business with, your colleagues, people in your network, gosh, there's hundreds of people that you could think of. Now think of all their biggest fails. I go, Well, I could think for a while, and then maybe I'll come up with something. We can think about 1,000 things about ourselves that we really hate. But you try to do it for someone else, it's like, no, I mean, I can't really think of anything. Act stupid, people forget, grow, change, people will see the new you. It goes back to, you first reach out to someone, they decline doing business with you. They're not going to think, wow, that guy was really stupid. I'm going to be thinking about him for the next 6 months. It simply doesn't happen. It slips their mind. I interact with a lot of people, and a lot of people end up flying under the radar of my brain after a while, if I don't interact with them. And so I have had people reach out to me again, and they're like, hey, have you thought about this? It's like, oh, yeah, actually, I would like to pursue that now. And it's the same thing now. If you have genuine change by the time you reapproach that person, there's no problem. If you go back to them and you are still babbling like an idiot because you haven't evolved, then you're going to have, you're in trouble. But there's no problem looking like an idiot now. And that might not be the best term because people don't want to have to face like, oh, I don't want to be called an idiot. I don't want to be presumed an idiot. But let's just say, I don't know what a good word for this. I almost said insufficient, but that sounds even more harsh. But if you haven't yet realized your potential, that's a good thing because you can grow into your potential. And then people don't care about where you were, they care about where you are now. That's what matters. And if you're still not at where you need to be right now, then that means you probably have more potential in front of you. And that's just all the more reason to continue on.
Okay. And it's like if you go out and put out your best, if you're like truly putting out your best, and that best might not look great, it might look, to some people it might look dumb, you might look stupid, whatever, like lack of a better term. And then if you grow from that, and then let's just say a year from now you don't make that mistake, now you are kind of in a better position. But if you hadn't made that silly looking mistake, you could still have that silly mistake in your bag that next time you do something that's going to look, it's not going to look very good because you still have that. It's kind of going back to Alex Hormozy, maybe some sort of debt, maybe it's the ignorance debt or something like that, I don't know. But
Yeah, absolutely. If you put forward your best and it doesn't reap the results you want, then actually the best is yet to come.
Okay. Huh. I guess this is kind of related to this part of what we're talking about with regards to looking silly or whatever you want to say. Would you recommend let's just say a business, like someone that's starting a business, maybe it's, I won't get into what the business is, but let's just say someone wants to start a business and they want to like make content. Do you recommend pushing it out to everybody, like their immediate network and all of that kind of stuff, or should they kind of start fresh? Because you alluded to earlier that as an entrepreneur, like a Gen Z entrepreneur, you do have to start fresh, and you're not going to get a whole lot out of your current network. Kind of have to build that from scratch. Does it pay to look, I don't know, to look, interesting to your friends when they might have a different idea about you after that? I don't know if that made sense. I'll try to word that better. Does it pay to market your, let's just say, your service, or maybe promote your business Instagram on your regular page, even if you think it might look, your friends might look at you weird do you think it's worth doing that, or do you think it's better to just put more effort into the business page? Maybe it's connecting with more people on in that account.
That's a little bit of a tricky question to answer because I don't necessarily know that it's straightforward. Like, oh, if you prioritize your personal page or your business page, you'll get more results. The first thing that I would say is if you are putting a lot of love and time into your business and it makes up a portion of you, you have nothing to lose by promoting that personally. In fact, before your business can grow, people won't know your business, they'll know you. And so you do want to stand behind your business. And I've been able to develop a lot of trust among people. They don't know estates necessarily. And I've even had people say, "Hey, I invested in your crowd fund. I don't really get what you do, but I trust you." And so I do think it's good to start on that more personable level. And who cares if people think that you're weird? Like, if you sincerely enjoy what you're doing, are you seriously going to sabotage that and throw it away, discard it? Because someone has a bad opinion about it. Like, you haven't even brought it to the masses. What if there's 999 people out there who have a good opinion about it? Why let this one person who might actually be biased, maybe is someone who's secretly resentful, and this does happen a lot. When you are first starting out and you bring an idea to friends, they might actually be a little upset that they didn't come up with it themselves. They don't want to see you get ahead. So you might receive more negativity there. But don't let that stop you. There's a lot of avenues that we could go down with this. But ultimately, you do need to bring it to your personal network. But then you need to be ready to quickly grow out of your personal network and bring it to the masses. And again, Hormozy said this at this point. I was just listening to one of his episodes. He kept quoting, I think, like Warren Buffett, but then the joke was that every time Warren Buffett said this quote, it actually came from someone else in history, and we just kind of keep re-quoting each other and paraphrasing it. Mm-hmm. So to paraphrase Hormozy, let's just say you are failing in the beginning and you just bring it to your immediate network or a small group of people. And you're like, well, I don't want to look stupid. You look stupid to a very small percentage of people. It's better to look stupid now in front of a small percentage of people, small number, I should say. And then grow, and then you can reach, the large numbers. You don't want to look stupid then. You want to get it out of the way now and figure it out now. It's like, well, I don't want people to have a bad perception of you. It's like, okay, there's like 10 people, in your immediate network who are going to have a bad perception of you. Like, who are you afraid of? You if you are just starting out, your network is so small, and so therefore the amount of negative feedback you're going to receive is proportionate to the amount of people that you are interacting with. Okay, so you're bad when you start out. Only a few people see you. All right, so only a few people saw how bad you were when you started out. You get better, you grow, and then as you get better, more people, new people, can see that new side of you. So yeah, I don't think there's a problem working with your immediate network and getting personable with them. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you have good people in your network who won't try to stomp you down. We'll support you. Yeah, it is a good starting point, and you might find allies in unusual places. I certainly have.
Okay. This is probably a little bit of a loaded question. How did you kind of start in this, not only entrepreneurial journey but personal development journey? Because your thoughts, and it seems like your mindset is very refined. Seems like you've been working on this for a while, and like I've been kind of working on my personal development journey, and um, you know, thinking about these things and being cognizant of these things for, I would probably say at this point, like almost probably like 7, 8 years. But like I still have trouble articulating some things, but I'd like to hear uh how you kind of got started.
Yeah, for me, I didn't think I would end up here. In high school, freshman and sophomore year of high school, I did everything by the book. I studied hard. I did really well. Just one of an A student, did my homework. I wanted to go to Harvard or something like that, and I don't know, get into politics, something that was very studious. And then I think it was like the summer of sophomore year, I started getting into music. And I thought, okay, what if I were to, because I played piano classically, and I thought, well, what if I were to play piano and monetize it? And so I started pursuing that, and that subliminally kind of started like, oh, maybe I can do something on my own and still be successful in it. And I started looking at like, what are other musicians doing? And this is at the time that TikTok was really starting to take off. And so I started making music, and I had always been writing. So I was writing on the side. And then I had that same idea. Well, what if I were to take what I'm writing and monetize it, publish it, and see if I could turn that into a job? Like, what if there's alternative routes as opposed to going to college? And like, look at how successful these published authors are, and they submit manuscripts that become movies. And maybe if you're making music online, you can get a bunch of fans and then get picked up by a record label, and bam, you've made it. Now that's the case for only 1%. And that's why I'm not in that pursuit, because it wasn't for me in that, way. I still, of course, write lots of stuff and make a lot of music, but it just started to change gears. I realized I had a lot more fun, a lot more freedom, and I really enjoyed the independence of going off on my own and creating something, as opposed to, all right, teacher wants an essay, I write an essay, hand it in, teacher doesn't like the essay, get a bad grade, now I feel bad, I feel like I've failed. I didn't follow the rules well enough. I didn't meet someone else's guidelines. And I realized like, oh, that's what the next 6+ years are going to be like. And then the next 40, if I go into corporate life, it's like, okay, I have to follow everyone else's rules and abide by this. So I had these conflicting opinions where I wanted to do things by the book, but I was actually having more success going off on my own. So I just started going off on my own. It made more sense to me. I was making more music, I was doing more writing. And then a friend reached out to me. He's like, hey, we can go trade the stock market and we can make a bunch of money. It's like, oh, this sounds too good to be true. And it was. But at the time, it sounded absolutely fantastic. I don't have to go to college to trade the stock market. I can just learn the signals, the technical analysis, figure out fundamental analysis, what companies are good, what charts mean. And then that's what we did. So we started day trading the stock market. And in addition to that, we co-founded like a technical analysis group. So we'd wake up every morning, we'd analyze the market, we'd figure out what trades are good, and then we'd jump in and on position and make some money or lose some money. And I really did make a good amount of money for a short amount of time. And then I made a really stupid trade and kind of blew it all. But again, it reinforced the idea that, oh, if I go off on my own, I can actually sustain it, I can grow, I can learn, and it's a lot more fun. After things didn't work out in the stock market, I needed to find some more work. And this is after I had graduated high school early. So I didn't go to college. Friends are going to college, didn't have a college picked out. I don't even know if I would have gotten into one, because my junior and senior year, I just said, screw it. I'm not going to do my homework. I don't care about tests. I went from an A student to a C student or less, because I just didn't care. I hated school at that point. It's like, I have to sit here for 8 hours when I could be doing anything else. I could be writing, I could be trading in the market, I could be becoming an entrepreneur. And here I am in class being belittled, and coerced into doing petty poetry homework that's 10 pages long. I needed extra income that summer. And so I started door dashing. And I haven't told a lot of people that I was like Waukesha's #1 door dasher, but I was, and I'm starting to be very proud of it because, well, I completed 2,400 dashes, if anyone's wondering. And I did that in about less than 12 months' time. I was out there grinding every single evening and I was making really good money. Like people left me good tips. I was very I was very
Hospitable or
hospitable.
uh, yeah, hospitable.
Yeah. So I was cordial, I was efficient, and I realized, oh, cool. I can pick up work when I want. I can get it done really fast and I get paid really well. It was a great side gig. And then into that, that's when my cousin had started talking to me about commercial real estate and like, hey, this is a much better investment strategy than the stock market. Maybe you should explore it. But still, I was becoming a startup founder and working a side gig and making more money than people who went to work at the local grocery store, whatever, another by the book move. Like who thought to become an independent contractor for DoorDash, a relatively new tech company that had just kind of popped up. You could work for them, you could deliver food. And especially during the pandemic era when everything was shut down, boy, we really had a field day because all of a sudden all the non-essential workers didn't have jobs. And it's like, oh, look, following the rules got you nowhere. And then going to college where you're actually taking an online class and you're paying the same amount to take your online class. Meanwhile, I'm out there teaching myself for free and working and making a bunch of money. Maybe I should keep doing this. It's like left to my own means, I outperform the norm. And maybe that's inherent characteristics of me, personality, whatever, or I taught myself to do that over time, but that's who I am. And so I realized that if I really set my mind to something and if I want something and if I'm left to my own means and at the same time have that level of responsibility and accountability in that if I don't perform, I will fail. So sort of like a mouse wants to chase towards the cheese, but you also got to run away from the cat. You'll run twice as fast. So having no one to count on but myself, and then also trying to pursue that financial freedom and becoming successful, it just gave me twice as much willpower and work ethic to get things done. And entrepreneurship, it's exactly what you need. And so I think that led me to, the success that I'm starting to see now.
What's your why? Like, you seem very determined, and what do you think is that part of your why? Wanting just loving the independent grind?
Well, as a complex human being, I think there's a lot that drives me. Um, I really like that cat in the cheese analogy because I think for me, that's a good example. I do want to be successful. I do want to leave a legacy. And I know a lot of people say, well, what's the point of a legacy? I think it's very important and it's very inspiring to others. There's a lot of people throughout history who continue to inspire us every single day. And they could say, well, what's the point of a legacy? And then they wouldn't have one. And then we wouldn't have their examples to live by. So I do think having a profound positive impact on the world is going to be quintessential. And I think more than ever, it's very possible for me. Steve Jobs says those who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world end up changing the world. And so I think that when all is said and done, I will have had some sort of impact. Then, of course, financial freedom for myself and my family. I really want to give back to my family. I owe it to my friends. I owe it to every single person who's gotten me here. You're hearing me talk, but there's 99 people who have helped me to get to this point. I'm just sort of the mouthpiece. I'm the CEO. I'm the face of the company, but I can't it's extraordinarily important to offer the appreciation, the gratitude to the other people who have, helped me get here. And so I think it's important to give back to those people. I'm not a monetary wealth person. Or that was two of the same word. I'm not like, I don't face, I don't chase.
I wouldn't say those are the same words, just because there are lots of different meanings of wealth, and wealth in itself is having like abilities to do things. It's uh I don't know who coins this, but like time, emotional, location, financial freedoms, like all those types of freedoms. Wealth is kind of, in my opinion, wealth is like a combination of that. Um, but when it comes to, I think you could have financial wealth or maybe like time wealth. So I kind of just wanted to make that distinction. Just
Yeah,
because, yeah, I
I
don't know.
think the word I was looking for was consumerist. So like,
Mhm.
I am not chasing, and I knew people like this, chasing the best sports car, the biggest house. I don't need designer clothes. People, I
Like a
just
big
had
number in your
someone,
bank account.
yeah. I just had someone
That,
critique my clothes. She said, "Hey, your t-shirts are so lame." I said, well, I don't
wow.
care.
Yeah, who wow.
So I just I don't need that stuff. I do appreciate craftsmanship and engineering. And so I do happen to like cars. I don't think I'd buy anything extravagant. And I would really need to make sure that I help everyone first, then help myself, and that I've earned it. Um, and then just being able to do stuff that I enjoy. I like traveling. I really like getting out of the house. I like being with friends. I like sitting down. I like being able to treat other people. And sharing that wealth again, because I don't think I got here alone. And whether this is the customers who make business possible, or the investors, or the people who believed in me, or people who gave me good tips while door dashing, like I think about
Hmm.
that often. I tip really well when I go out because I think of the people who tipped me really well when I delivered. I want to give back to people, so that's a really big thing for me. Um, and I know that sounds very altruistic, and it's not 100% that way. It's not like um, I don't think I'll give everything away, because I do want to make sure that my family is sustainable. I want to build something that
Enjoy,
can,
not only be able to like afford to have, like if you get to this position, you deserve to have a certain level of safety. You deserve to have a level of, you know, for lack of a better word, like luxury. Like if you want to have these things and you work tirelessly for decades, there's
yes,
no reason that you shouldn't have these things if you want them.
right,
So it's
right.
like, I understand.
That's sort of an underlying thought that I have. I have made sacrifices, and I have put in, maybe we could say, a little bit more work than the average person. Um, but again, I don't think I'm entitled to anything.
Hmm.
If I become wealthy, it's not because I was chasing wealth. It's because I was trying to build something really awesome, and then the wealth came as a result. Like I just want to build something really awesome. I want to impact a lot of people. I want a lot of people who are using my solution, and I want people to say, "Wow, this has really transformed things for the better." And I know that wealth will follow that, but that's not my. If you're just chasing wealth, go trade the stock market or go sell drugs or whatever. Like there's a lot of ways to make a lot of money really quickly, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything in between is going to be fulfilled. You know, actually meeting the needs of your customers, or generating more value for other people. If there's going to be, because if we fundamentally break down wealth to mean value, because there's a dollar sign, this is how much it's valued at. If there's going to be value in my bank account, it's because I added value to other people's lives. I don't want to acquire wealth by extracting value from other people, siphoning off their hard earned money and then collecting my fair share. We have the government for that. I want to create wealth for other people. I want to create value. And then I'll get, what I, a consequent,
You would say you're a
the
believer in the
extra.
law of reciprocity? The
I
law of
have,
reciprocity?
I've not heard of the law of reciprocity. Would you break that down for me?
Yeah. So, um, we've kind of been, this is kind of like a term that is used for like when we used to learn fractions, like multiplying by the reciprocal, like the reciprocal.
Hmm.
That's how I kind of think about it. But law of reciprocity kind of means that uh, if I put value out, let's just say one person gets value from it, the second person, the third person, the fourth person, and I have something to sell. Let's say I have something um that they need, and all of these people, they see it, but then the fourth person goes, you know what, I like that, like I'll go ahead and do business with you, or whatever the case may be. Then they are reciprocating value. um but this is kind of like law of reciprocity kind of just means uh you receive, not necessarily proportionately, but you receive value if you're putting it out.
Yeah, that's a really good way to sum up my word spaghetti, my mental gymnastics to get to that point. Yeah, and then of course, on the flip side of things, I would say growing up, I was always an underdog. Um, I was deemed average, maybe unimportant. Um, I wasn't a high performer except in grades, but even then, I wasn't, top of my class. I was like 25th. So I just wasn't what I wasn't this exceptional person. And so I think about that, and people treated me differently because of that. Where it's like, oh, you're lukewarm. You're not interesting. Um, you're not cool. And that there's sort of that chip on my shoulder, where it's like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm not that person. And I think about that often. It's not just high school experiences. It's like every year I think about who I was 12 months ago. It's like I I wasn't as great as I should have been. And so I need to make sure that I'm putting as much distance between that um, less than ideal version of myself and my current self. And that just like a magnet keeps pushing me. Like every 12 months, look back. Oh, I was better than I was, uh, but still not good enough. I need to make sure that I'm always moving forward.
Okay, good enough in the interesting side of like yourself, or just having a story, having you know having failures, successes, like just things to make your life more interesting, or things to make you know your mindset more interesting. So um yeah, could you kind of just elaborate on um what it is that you're trying to distance, and what you're trying to improve, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a little bit tricky because I say that I'm always
Mhm,
improving everything about myself all the time. I really like
mhm.
1% better. Um,
Yeah, I love that the 1% rule. Or
I don't know if I could really put like straightforward terms or guidelines like I need this to be improved about myself. Um, a big underlying theme would definitely be maturity. I want to make sure that as a human being, I am just becoming a better human being. I'm um, becoming a positive influence on other people. I'm providing value to society. I am more in touch with my mentality and that I understand myself better. And then there's little things that you can improve upon as well. Whether it's for me, big thing has been physicality. I'm always in the gym. I'm making sure that I work out so that I am not weak. I don't want to be physically or mentally, spiritually weak. So I'm making sure that I'm doing whatever I can to fortify myself. And I think that's an obligation that everyone should have. We would all be in much better places if we held ourselves up to a standard. Um, and the Jordan Peterson has something where if you set your eyes on something in the future, you're like, okay, I want to aspire to be that. But what's the difference between where I am now and that ideal? That means you have to start to judge yourself. And so I judge myself on the basis of whatever my ideal is and where I am now, and then what needs to be done better. Because if you can't ever say that something is wrong, then you won't be determined to change it. So, and this will vary depending on how neurotic you are or critical. But the more that you can, and this has to be, you have to tread this lightly and make sure that you are applying it appropriately. But the more that you can critique, the more that you can be willing to improve. Some people have sensitive areas where they're like, oh, I don't want to touch that. My ego says I can't touch that. I don't want to go down that route. And then they just don't improve in that way. But if you have that open mindset, like, hey, maybe there's something here. Maybe I could improve here. And then you just kind of work on it. But that means that you do have to judge yourself present and past, in order to
Make reasonable change.
Yeah, to make that change, to plot yourself on a
Better.
number line.
Okay. Yeah. So that brings a lot of different interesting thoughts to my head. One of which being the idea that people are very resistant to change. People are very resistant to, positive criticism.
Mhm.
Has it been, this is really interesting to think about. Has it been natural for you to just objectively evaluate your situation and make the right changes? Because it seems like you're very logical when it comes to making those changes, whereas some people aren't going to be that logical. They'll push it to the wayside and say, okay, you know what, that's like, I don't need to deal with that because, and then insert, a justification.
Mhm.
Has it been easy for you? Has that been natural? Or yeah, how did you develop that ability?
I wouldn't say it was natural. I don't know how it was developed. I do know that it improved over time, and to the point where I can take a step back, I can detach and say, this needs to be improved. There's a problem here, Matt. You need to rectify it, or all hell could break loose. And a big part of that is accountability. When you have accountability and you don't meet expectations, things go wrong. And so for me, I have to make sure that I'm always on, top of my game. Is that a figure of speech?
I'm not sure. I think that's literal.
Well, in other words, I need to make sure that I'm always performing at my best, or else things go wrong. And that's just become an objective reality of life for me, especially in business. If I'm not at my best, then a competitor could overtake me. If I'm not at my best personally, then someone could manipulate me. If I'm not at my best financially, then something could go wrong and just wipe me out completely. It's very difficult. It was not easy to get to this point, because again, you have to be criticizing yourself. You have to critique yourself and say, like, I guess I do have a lot of room for improvement. I'm not who I'm supposed to be. I'm not maximizing, or I'm not fulfilling my potential. And so you do have to swallow your ego, and ego is very tough for a lot of people to get over, to say like, oh, yeah, actually I'm a flawed person. I'm imperfect, for better or for worse. But maybe I'm also like just doing stuff terribly wrong. Maybe I make a lot of bad decisions. Maybe I'm more of an idiot than I'd like to admit. Very, very tough. But hey, you say it, you get it over with. It's like, okay, now what? Why do I think that? Well, I think I'm an idiot because XYZ, because I keep making these mistakes that are ruining my life. Now you know where to start. You fix those and you work from there. Um, just being able to detach, take the emotion out of it, and you could. It's very tricky because the more you criticize yourself, it's sort of a downward spiral. That's what I was alluding to before. But if you can detach and say, like, if someone else were to politely help me improve, what would they say? And then kind of looking at yourself in third person and assessing yourself. And again, having an ideal, like, okay, I want to be a better business person. Um, where am I now? What's it going to take to get there? I need to improve these skills, these traits, and then I can work on that. Seeing as I'm fully responsible and accountable, like I said before, I've accepted that as my truth. And my truth is that I'm always going to be on the move. I'm not going to settle. There's no, what would be the word? Complacency. I was just watching a video the other evening, and maybe some people like to try this. One thing that drives the correction of complacency is actually boredom. And it's very easy for people to become complacent nowadays because we're comfortable. Like, yeah, I can be average, but I don't have to worry about things going wrong. I still have my job. I have some friends. I can scroll social media for free dopamine. Nothing's going wrong for me. If you don't have those to rely on, or if you can't constantly be stimulated, you'll pull yourself out of complacency really quickly. And I've experimented with stuff like that, and I think it did help. Being in solitude, I kind of live in the middle of nowhere right now. I do want to move back to like a city, but not being around people has driven me like, oh, I actually don't really like my situation right now, and I can't be complacent with it. There's no stability. It's not the outcome that I like. I'm uncomfortable with it. How do I get out? And so if you remove all the things that overstimulate us and blind us from our current situation, we will quickly become uncomfortable, bored, distasteful of where we are. And you snap out of it. You're like, okay, I need to improve something.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's very fascinating because I've found myself, I've always been very easily distractible. So social media, for example, that was always a very tough thing for me to put down, and I never really recognized the problem that it caused and like the productivity that it's taking away from. But eventually I stopped, and ever since I stopped, and I'm not like 100% I don't have social media,
Mhm.
and it's really hard as a content creator to not consume, when you're if you don't have a platform that kind of aggregates posting, you
Mhm.
have to go on that platform to post, and
Right,
it's
right.
pretty easy to get sucked into some of these explore pages and whatnot. um but yeah, that's very interesting. But yeah, I kind of I removed some short form, like a lot of short form, so like TikTok, YouTube shorts. I'm not watching like any of that kind of stuff, but it's still, you know it's so difficult not to. But at the same time, I recognize that it's just it's not contributing to my life, but it's just that illogical desire to watch that and waste time,
Mhm.
even though I know. um and it seems like you kind of are really like you're at peace with that, and you're pretty good at mitigating that. Do you have that desire?
That desire,
that
what?
desire that desire to consume content, or um like short form content?
I've definitely fallen susceptible to it. I find that, like, I'll go on Instagram to post something for the business, and then I spend 10 minutes scrolling. It's like, I don't even know how I got here. How did I get here? This is terrible.
Mm,
I do cut out the most obvious form. So I'm not on TikTok. If I'm on YouTube, I don't go to shorts. I make sure I'm watching a long form video that isn't going to be playing with my attention span.
mhm.
I try not to use, I don't use Twitter because boy, it's too fun to get into an argument on there and just read a thread
Yeah.
of conversations. Um, and then some larger items like video games. A lot of people use video games as distractions, and they will readily admit that, like, oh yeah, I like to wind down to my evening by distracting myself with some video games. Like I get off work, I just want to cool down for a couple hours. But it's it's like, okay, so you're overly stressed with something. Things aren't as good as you'd like. And then you use video games to band-aid the symptoms of your less than ideal life. Cut out the video games. What do you have now? It's like, okay, I don't know what to do. Well, now you have some free time. Maybe you should go fix the things that you don't like in your life. And the more you can
Yeah.
cut out distractions and the easy guilty pleasures, you start to realize, I don't have anything. I don't have anything to do. Well, great. How you can get after it.
Mhm. So, where exactly did you move? Like you mentioned, like distancing yourself. Where did you move?
Yeah, well, I was up in Wisconsin my whole life. And then I moved down south away from everyone, all my contacts, all my friends and everything. I guess so that I didn't get sucked into the college scene, and it's definitely easier on the financials down here. It's helped. It's helped me isolate. I literally just work and then I lift. Because not only am I far away from where I grew up, but I'm like 30 minutes from the nearest city of sorts. So I don't really have a choice but to work and then get myself back out of here. So
Mhm.
I guess it's sort of working out because things are turning around. It's a little tough on the mentality. It's certainly because you feel very isolated and lonely. Not a lot of human contact, less than I would like, especially in business where networking is very important, shaking hands, doing business. Um, but it has dismissed a lot of the distractions. So it hasn't been terrible overall, but personally, I'm ready to get back into some cities and doing business.
So it's funny that you brought that up and that you are in that situation. I've thought about that many times. Um, like just moving somewhere else in Wisconsin because I'm from Door County, went to Oshkosh, probably returning, not sure yet, but that's kind of besides the point. But I've thought about moving somewhere else and doing kind of what you did. What's your you've elaborated a little on your experience. Would you recommend it to someone in kind of the infant stages of someone's business, or do you think that's better to, wait until you are making, like, breaking even and making money with your business? What are your thoughts on who you'd recommend something like that to?
It's a little bit more complicated than um, who's the best fit for this. First off, if you are in a business, in an industry that relies on personal relationships, you should probably be around a lot of people. At the same time, I guess it depends on who those people are. A change of environment can be super powerful. If you are moving out of some place where you grew up with or grew up in with people, that aren't necessarily on your path, then it might be beneficial for you to move out of there, find people who are in your industry, doing business, performing really well, high achievers, surrounding yourself with those and sort of establishing a new circle. That can be very helpful. At the same time, if you are looking for like complete isolation, just cutting people off and going into monk mode, make sure you have a way to get back. Now, when your back is against the wall, when you're on death ground, it can be very motivating. Like you don't have a choice but to get out of here. But a very small percentage of the population is going to be able to pull that off. Most people might be driven a little crazy, to be honest. So I would say maintain some connections, make sure that you don't burn your ships completely if you're not comfortable with that idea. And then keep some friends around. You know, it's good to be able to talk with people. Virtually is okay. I think having that actual physical presence with people is even more important. But it comes down to what type of character you are. I like a good challenge, and this is like a battle for the business and myself and all that's good. So I don't mind it. I think I'm sort of at my threshold where it's like, okay, time to get back, business taken off, need to get re-involved, or else it could be actually rather to my detriment, rather than my, my, I'm sort of blanking on the word, benefit. That's a really,
benefit, yeah.
It's a really simple word to forget.
Yeah.
So just walking that line carefully. Yeah, and if you don't know, talk to people. Talk to people. If you're starting to question your sanity, go talk to people. Figure it out. That's probably not a good sign. If you feel challenged, a little uncomfortable, that's pretty good. You want to be out of your comfort zone, and maybe that's what it is fundamentally. I think at some point, all people, should be out of their comfort zone. And maybe that means switching up the environment to something that you don't know, something that pushes you a little bit more and gets you out of the house.
Yeah. I guess I kind of did something similar, but I moved actually to a more populous area instead of the opposite. But so I went to Breckenridge, and I had not a similar experience, but I guess similar takeaways, like a new location, new people. I didn't know a single person out there. And when I went out there, it's very interesting. Even though it's not like a different culture, there was a very different way of going about things. Even like nationally, from Wisconsin to Colorado, it was very interesting. But I realized a lot of things about myself that I didn't know before, and one of which was I developed a way bigger or way greater sense of confidence, interestingly enough. And I don't know where that came from, but maybe it was just the idea that all of my network knows me as this. Then I go out to this new place, and the overall sentiment from these people seems better than it was. And I don't know if that's just just because I'm a new face to them, and it's kind of like a they don't want to maybe offend me by like reacting negatively to something I say or whatever, like micro things. But yeah, I definitely realized that even in the few months that I was there, like the friendships that I gained, and yeah, it was very interesting. It was a very interesting experience. I'm thinking those are kind of a couple same takeaways that you've been having.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. Surrounding yourself with people who might be more aligned or more in tuned with your mission could completely change who you are as a person. This is a challenge. Kind of goes back to like, all right, what got me here? I think a lot of people doubted me and they didn't believe in me. And now all of a sudden I get on calls with people who are like, I'm really impressed by you. And it's really changing how I perceive myself, because I've always thought that I was like destined to be an underperformer and that I was unimportant. And now people are just treating me with respect and they appreciate me. And it's changed how I value myself. It's really great, actually. I'm
Mhm.
I'm glad that I didn't get stuck in um, that inferiority situation, lifestyle.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that kind of correlates with having maybe some sort of controversial opinion being um like your natural kind of desire to do something alternative to, what everyone else is doing, going to
Right.
college,
Mhm.
pursuing a degree, and then yeah, sitting behind a desk for another 40 years until I don't know, they retire. Leaving a legacy.
Mhm.
What do you I'm sure you have plenty of, pretty grand ideas of goals and all of that. Do you have anything that besides like leaving a legacy, do you have any um goals that you want to hit by this target? Um like maybe one big um light that you're running towards, um one big goal.
I don't know if I could consolidate my goals into like a big goal and say like, I want to become this person with X, Y, and Z by this time. I've never plotted it out specifically, and I wouldn't tell people to sway away from that. I think it is important to have a detailed uh, objective in front of you, but at the same time, my course of life has just changed so many times that I don't know. I hardly know what's going to happen a week from now. That's how quickly things are improving and just shifting course for me. Um, so 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's very difficult to say, I think I will be this person, or at least I'm going to strive for that person, because something might go really well that boosts me up, and then it's like, okay, well, and then what? Well, I didn't expect to hit this for another 10 years. Now what? Or if something goes
Mhm.
terribly wrong, um, at least you can say, okay, something has gone wrong. Now I'm further away from where I want to be. I really need to make sure I'm on course. Uh, but at the same time, if something goes wrong that can't be rectified, then you kind of have to live in the shadow of that giant milestone that you placed in front of you. So, off the top of my head, nothing for me in particular. I hope people can take that piece of advice and make something of it. In
Just
real
overall,
time. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, kind of just overall, you would like your vision for e-states to see through, for people's lives to be changed. And yeah, so this makes sense because uh you mentioned something along the lines of not necessarily being um driven by material things, more so just like the impact. It would make sense that you don't have a specific goal that, well, I'm not saying that you don't have a specific goal, but it would make sense to not have a specific goal related to a number, because it's more along the lines of like your journey is more aligned with wanting to help people and that's not really something that's quantifiable.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I guess that's a good bottom line. I want to make sure that whoever I am and whatever I've done is of the highest quality, but I don't know how to, you know, turn that into a quantity. It doesn't mean a $200 million yacht or supercars or whatever. Um, the only thing I know for sure is that in terms of numbers, I would like a decent number of kids. I,
Okay.
I like kids. I would love a family, and I certainly enjoy my nieces and nephews. So
Do you prefer books or creators, or like content creators, or are you kind of a mix of?
that's a good question. I've read a decent number of books. I've listened to a lot of audiobooks. I most frequently listen to podcasts though, and I assume that would fall under content creators. And a lot of the stuff that I do, like if I want to learn about something or explore a topic, I'll go to YouTube and it's being presented by a person. So that's content creators. To me, and I don't know what this says about me, but when I start reading books, I start to fall asleep. um, so if I can find that same information in like a different format, whether it's like an audiobook so that I can listen to it while I walk or do something, or being delivered in a more entertaining way by a content creator or contextualized, that's better for me. I like that. And podcasts are uber effective because then we can take the content of a book and then you hear someone break it down, and then you have a dialogue actually, because there's usually another person there and they're discussing it, as opposed to just me and that book and then whatever I think of that book.
Mhm. And it's two opinions, and opinions kind of going back and forth to formulate one, as opposed to, I wouldn't say this is one-sided, because everyone's information is, especially when it comes to a book that's getting published, that's a very refined piece of information. But I guess you could say it's two opinions that are kind of not competing, but like competing in the best way to make this one consensus, as opposed to a more one-sided piece of information. What what do you think is, before we go into content creators, um what do you think is your favorite, not favorite book, but most insightful book? Something that, like the book that you've been able to take the most out of.
Well, I don't own many books, but what I would say I most revisit would be Think and Grow Rich. There's a lot of people, I've met a lot of people who like are in pyramid schemes and they read that book and they're like, oh, I'm gonna become rich. If you actually break down the chapters, there's a lot of good stuff in there. And I actually have the book sitting just out of arm's length, so I can't go grab it, but it's sitting by my bedside. And whether it's just being persistent, having faith in the process, um, building a good network of people around you, making sure that your subconscious mind is in the right spots. You know, what are you reaffirming to yourself? Positive messages or negative messages? A lot of that type of stuff, regardless if you think like, oh, I'm just going to think really hard and I'm going to attract wealth. Or if you think, you know, if I apply these and work really hard at a business, I can become successful. If you look at it objectively and not in like this metaphysical uh, realm, it's a really good book. All right, I am going to reach for it, just so that I have some chapters to reference. So first and foremost, you know, they talk about desire. And I think it's important to have a burning desire, You absolutely have to be committed to whatever you are pursuing, or else you will never stomach the hardship that you encounter. There's a lot of people who want to be successful, but just like wanting to be successful is not good enough. You have to like seriously demand it of yourself and of your circumstances and pursue it at all, against all odds. Chapter 3, faith. I think that's very important. At no point have I known if anything was going to work out, but I have an optimism, a hope, a faith that if I persist, my actions will reap results. Specialized knowledge is a really good one. You have to become an expert in your realm. This goes back to school. School, even universities, are a lot of general knowledge where it's not experience, it's not hands-on in the workplace. It's just here's some information, high level overview, and then they reward you with a degree for that. There's a reason why I'm outperforming people with degrees, and it's because I threw myself into the weeds. No, into the wolves. That's right. No, I did get into the weeds, but I threw myself to the wolves. Where it's like, okay, I have to learn everything. I have to be very specific in these things that aren't taught in school. I have to become an expert at it so that I can discuss it on panels and in webinars and at presentations. And then because I'm specialized in that field, people can turn to me. Like I'm not just like I don't give ambiguous answers when it comes to my solutions. I am the person to go to for my solutions for my industry. Organized planning. To some degree, it's very hard to organize your future if you don't know what's going to happen and we're always rerouting. But at least if you are heading in the right direction, if you can discern whether you're going in the right or wrong direction, you're doing something right. Making decisions, very big one. I'm faced with a lot of tough decisions, and I have been, over the duration of this company. Sometimes I don't know if I'm making the right decision, and it's very difficult to like, there's pros and cons, other people's interests are involved. And if I do something wrong, I'm accountable. If I make a bad decision, I'm at fault. So being able to make a decision and go with it, because of course, not making a decision is a decision as well. So just being able to stick with something and go with it. Persistence, you don't get anywhere without persistence. The difference, I don't know who gave this quote, but the difference between the entrepreneur who succeeds and the entrepreneur who fails is that the entrepreneur who failed just quit. No matter how many times you encounter struggle, if you don't quit, you can never fail. And that's how I view like myself versus competitors or other people. I will never quit. You can't win against me because no matter what you throw at me, I am not going to be quitting. All right. So if I'm not quitting, then I've like, there's no other thing except to eventually become successful. Like if
you do it long enough and you are continuously learning, if you're continuously growing and continuously going in this right direction, it would be just like it would be unreasonable if you're good, it would be unreasonable to think that you'd be good at something in a short amount of time. It would be unreasonable if you're doing all of those things, continuously growing, continuously learning, going in the right direction. It would be unreasonable to be bad at something if you've played this longer than 99% of the other people playing this game.
Yeah, absolutely. You're gonna strike gold eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was I get a lot of insight from Alex Hormozi as well. And kind of about that. So would you say Alex Hormozi is where you get the majority of your inspiration?
No, because I only started listening to him a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Granted, I'm quoting him a lot because he's got great stuff. I would say a lot of my leadership practices come from Jocko Willink. I've listened to almost every single episode of his podcast, and he's got a lot of episodes. I have Spotify next to me, so we're going to find out. And it's important to keep in mind that most of his podcast episodes are like 3 to 5 hours. So if he's got
Wow.
393 episodes, you can bet I've heard a lot. And he
Yeah.
covers everything from like leadership in the battlefield, and then transferring that to leadership in a competitive business environment. Like how can you take a life and death situation, extract the lessons from that, and then use that in something diplomatic like sealing deals, you know, and shaking hands.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of value in those episodes. Every single line is usually brilliant, and he has the objective and serious take that I like to hear when talking about business. And so does Hormozy. There's a lot of self-help advice out there that beats around the bush. It's ambiguous. It's too fluffy. It's pretty. I want the real deal. I want it. That's just my personality. Tell me what it is. Tell me the stark reality, and I'll make sense of it. So Jocko's been a huge influence. Um, there's a few other podcasts just talking about, well, you always got to be improving yourself. You got to be improving your communication skills, your organizational skills, time management, all that type of stuff. And then that filters into my business. But yeah, I haven't listened to too much on from Hormozy, um, but I'm definitely starting to apply a lot of his stuff. And what's nice is that the message that he gives really complements stuff that I've already heard. And so then using that collection of knowledge helps me, and different perspectives as well, helps me to, make the best decision for my circumstance. Versus if you only listen to one person over and over again, and you keep trying to apply their very niche, very narrow knowledge to your situation, it might fall short. So having a breadth of people that you listen to is a good strategy.
Okay. So if you were to recommend a book, you would probably say generally, if someone said, "What book should I read? I'm interested in entrepreneurship," you would say Think and Grow Rich. And if someone were to come to you and ask, who should I listen to, you would say, um, get, a plethora of different people to listen to.
Yes. Although I highly recommend Jocko and Hormozy, of course.
Jacko.
Yeah, when it comes to book, there's a lot of great books out there. Tips for investing, building a business, sealing deals, sales, influencing people. But I think a good starting place to just get your head in order is Think and Grow Rich. If you literally think that you are going to think and manifest like a wealth, some people think that they sit down and they manifest for 15 minutes and like, oh, I see myself driving a sports car. I will have a sports car. Then just freaking throw the book out. But if you realize like, oh, the mindset that I have is going to determine my actions. The actions that I take is going to determine my outcomes, and then the outcomes will determine whether I'm successful or not. Then it's like, okay, now you've connected the dots. You understand that you need to be persistent and have a really good desire and set yourself on the right path. So I think it's a really good starting point to build that independent entrepreneurial mindset. But it's actually a pretty ambiguous book. Like it doesn't give you any advice on anything in particular. It's not going to tell you strategies. It's just going to say like give you 15 stories that I don't even know if they're real about. Oh, this guy named Joe was really persistent. One day he was persistent enough that his boss gave him a raise and everything worked out. I don't know if the stories are real, but I can say, as a person who is real, I've applied the knowledge and I've had real outcomes, real positive outcomes using the philosophies of that book. And I think a lot of people have as well. So it doesn't hurt to read it.
I like that. And I love that philosophy of not just manifesting to manifest. I've actually made a piece of content about this, the idea that manifesting indirectly, like if someone asks me, well, is it worth it to manifest? I would say there's no there's no direct benefit to manifesting or manifestation, but the indirect benefit is that eventually your priorities shift and in accordance with, you know, the actions that are required to get there. And yeah, that's kind of exactly what you just said. um you know, manifesting on its own won't do anything. It's a matter of the actions that lead to the results, and manifesting can help out with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it resembles a bigger picture that if you have life on a silver platter, or you have really good luck, whatever, or you think you can manifest, I'm going to be more successful than you because I take action and I work. You don't. That's all. And there are people who are ahead of me in life. And let's just say I'm down here. I wasn't born wealthy, wasn't well connected, but the trajectories are complete opposite. There are people who are really well off because they've never had a struggle. They just kind of trickle down, versus someone who is constantly putting in the hours and is determined, against all odds to make it up there. It's going to happen. You're going to cross and you're going to get ahead. I've met people like that in my life directly, and I've interacted with them, befriended them, and they use their current situation to actually speak down to me. Like, well, I must be better than you because as of right now, I'm further off. It's like, well, let's give it a year. Let's give it 2 years.
Yeah.
And then everything turns around. That's how it was in, school. And it goes back to like the whole, like, okay, I wasn't a high performer in some areas. The way that people responded, in that social hierarchy, like, oh, we must be better than everyone else. A lot of those people aren't doing too well right now. I look around and they never amounted to anything. And in fact, some of them are in pretty tough situations. So
Yeah,
set
it's
that
interesting
course straight.
Yeah, the balance between confidence and knowing what you're worth. Let's just say you achieve this level of success. You need to have some sort of level of confidence to get there, because you need to believe in your vision and all that kind of stuff. But it's also a balance of confidence and being humble.
Yes.
Before we end this off, what do you think is the absolute number one takeaway of this whole? I know this we covered a lot of things. Number one takeaway, and a follow-up to that would be for someone who has an idea that doesn't know if it's going to work out, but they're passionate about it. They actually see how it could be valuable. What is their first step to entertaining the idea of bringing that business idea to fruition?
So in terms of major takeaways, so we didn't exactly have a theme. So,
That's
like,
true.
what's one thing that we could wrap up with? I'm not sure. I think there's a few things based on our general areas of topic areas. Fundamentally, nobody has it easy, and the entrepreneurial journey is very tough. It's going to take a very particular person to become successful, and that really could be anyone. Like, it's not predetermined who's going to be a good entrepreneur or not. It's just in the moment, are you going to rise to the occasion? That could be anyone. I think Goggins is always a great example of this. It's like, you wouldn't expect someone like that to be the most tough person on earth where he was, but he just decided that he would be. So you might not be successful or ambitious or passionate about something now, but I mean, think, and you could grow rich. You could just change your mindset about that and it'll work. Yeah, we had a lot of topics, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Maybe that is the good overarching thing. Like, hey, you gotta love what you do and pursue it. Um, as for advice, if someone has an idea and they're contemplating pursuing it, you should pursue it because here's the stark reality. If you have a good idea, and we don't know if it's a good or bad idea, but let's just say it's an idea with potential. If you don't pursue it, someone else will. And guess what? They're probably going to be successful with it and you're not. And you missed out because you just didn't. We don't know that. But the opportunity cost of just sitting on your hands and doing nothing when you could be pursuing this major thing, it's going to be costly. You're going to look over, you're going to see that successful person, and you're going to think, oh, they were lucky. They didn't deserve that. You're going to be resentful. It could have been you. You just didn't take action. You didn't put in the work. So if you have an idea, whether it's small or large, you want to write a song, you want to write a book, you want to start a business, you want to learn a new skill, you want to go to a different college, with rare exceptions, the opportunity cost of not taking action is going to be more costly than whatever you could lose by pursuing that. And anyone who's listening to this is probably pretty young. You have your whole life to experiment and fail and figure out the way. I had multiple times at 17, 18, and 19 when I lost finances, or I just felt like I didn't have a route to go and I thought life was over. Like, wow, it's a pretty young age to think that I screwed myself over, because you got plenty of time to figure things out, fix it up. And you can't be in a rush with that stuff. You can't compare yourself. I was constantly thinking like, okay, I made a bad trade in the stock market. Meanwhile, this guy has a Lamborghini. It's over for me. I feel terrible. You can't compare yourself to that. So don't feel in a rush just because of where someone else is. Remember, this goes back to the idea of trajectory. Keep the trajectory in mind. Pursue that idea. Make sure it's something you're really passionate about. And make sure you're an expert in it, or could become an expert. And again, that means you're going to have to thoroughly enjoy that area of that area of study, that industry, that skill, and then find a way to monetize it. And you'll likely turn it into something that's sustainable.
I love that. Yeah, that last piece. Well, thank you for agreeing to take the time. I have so many other questions that I would love to ask you, but we're probably approaching 2 hours at least at this point. Before we go, where can people follow your journey? Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, handles, all that kind of stuff.
Great question. Great question. So first and foremost, if you want to find me on Instagram, that would be at Real Matt Schneider. That is my personal Instagram. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, you can probably look up Matthew Schneider and find me. I have a very iconic profile picture of all the corporate photos that you've ever seen. I'm like the only person not looking at the camera. I'm looking way off to the side, giving a big old smirk with a blue background. Matthew Schneider, CEO of eStates, sticks out like a sore thumb. I think you can also go to linkedin.com/in/real Matt Schneider. I use real Matt Schneider a lot. There's a lot of Matt Schneiders, but I am the real one. Of course, you can find eStates stuff. You can go to LinkedIn and look up eStates. That's stylized as E-States. You can go to e-states.com, eStates.com. We're going to be having a new landing page, new stuff, a lot of cool stuff that people are going to be able to experiment with. Enterprise grade. It's going to be polished, attractive, and functional. Those are really our main platforms. And then, if anyone reaches out to me via those methods, of course, you can email. Does anyone email that isn't running a business? Well, if you are, that is matt@e-states.com. Send me an email. We can connect from there. Absolutely looking to connect with people, anything, whether it's eStates or you're an entrepreneur, looking to collaborate, whatever it might be. I would love to sit down and talk, because I'm always looking at, new business ideas just to learn about them, or to offer advisory or become a mentor, whatever that might be. Or if you are interested in, commercial real estate, property ownership, investing, blockchain, and AI, something that we didn't really touch on too much, but the technology areas, yeah, I am free reign. Reach out to me and
Resource.
yeah.
Yeah, great. And if you can send me all of those handles, I can probably find the most of them, but if you could send me some of those, that would be awesome. I'll put them all in the
Show
description.
notes.
Yeah, the show notes. Chris Williamson. Have you ever seen Chris Williamson? His podcasts?
I think so, but that's not who I got it from. I don't.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
show notes is like
Or
the official term
maybe
now.
Huberman.
Yeah,
Probably Huberman.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, if you guys found this insightful, yeah, like all that fun stuff, share. But yeah, see you in the next podcast. And once again, thank you, Matt, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for everyone who joined us today.